The gunshot doesn't sound like the movies. It's not a crack, it's a thud. A wet, ugly thud that swallows the applause and spits out silence. Miami, December 1963. The Fontainebleau Hotel ballroom is packed with 800 people in tuxedos and diamonds. Frank Sinatra is supposed to be on stage right now, singing "Fly Me to the Moon." But Frank Sinatra isn't on stage. A man who looks exactly like him is. And that man just took a bullet meant for the chairman of the board. Frank watches from the wings, frozen, as his double crumples to the floor. The orchestra stops. A woman screams. And in that moment, Frank Sinatra realizes something that will haunt him for the rest of his life. The mask he created to protect himself has just bled for him, and he doesn't even know the man's real name. To understand what happened that night in Miami, you need to understand who Frank Sinatra was in 1963. He wasn't just a singer anymore. He was an empire. He was a target. The previous year had been brutal. The Cal Neva Lodge scandal had exploded in the press. Sam Giancana, the Chicago mob boss, had been spotted at Frank's Lake Tahoe resort, a direct violation of Nevada gaming regulations. Frank had lost his gaming license. Worse, he had lost his friendship with President Kennedy. The man he had campaigned for, the man he had believed would change America, had cut him off completely. Bobby Kennedy, the Attorney General, was waging war on organized crime, and Frank Sinatra was collateral damage. The threats started arriving in October. Handwritten notes, phone calls in the middle of the night. Someone wanted Frank dead, and nobody knew exactly who. The FBI suspected it was connected to the Giancana situation, maybe a rival family trying to send a message. Frank's people suspected it was someone closer, a jealous husband, a disgruntled business partner. The truth was murkier. In 1963, Frank Sinatra had made enough enemies to fill a stadium. His manager, Hank Sanicola, came to him with a solution. "We hire a double," Hank said, "for public events, just until we figure out who's behind this." Frank laughed at first. A double? Like some kind of dictator? But Hank was serious. "You're worth $20 million, Frank. You're insured for 5. But there's no insurance policy that covers a bullet to the head." The double's name was Vincent Palazzo. At least, that's the name he gave. He was a lounge singer from Jersey City who had spent 10 years perfecting Frank Sinatra's voice, his walk, his gestures. He worked the circuit, playing small clubs where people wanted to feel like they were seeing Sinatra without paying Sinatra prices. He was good, scary good. When Frank first met him, he felt like he was looking into a mirror that had aged 5 years in the wrong direction. "You're not me. I haven't his ready," Frank said, circling Vincent like a predator. "You're a cartoon of me." Vincent didn't flinch. "With respect, Mr. Sinatra, I'm whatever you need me to be." Frank Sinatra in December 1963 was a man at war with himself. On the surface, he was still the chairman, still the voice, still the guy who could walk into any room and own it. But underneath, the cracks were showing. He was drinking more, sleeping less. The Kennedy betrayal had wounded him in ways he couldn't articulate. He had believed in something, and that something had been ripped away. His entourage noticed the change. Jilly Rizzo, his closest confidant, would later say, Frank was looking for a fight that winter, any fight. He wanted to hit something, but he couldn't figure out what. The death threats gave him a target for his paranoia. Every waiter became a potential assassin. Every phone call could be the last. Frank started carrying a gun, a small .38 revolver tucked into his waistband. He told Jilly it was for protection, but Jilly knew the truth. Frank was hoping someone would give him an excuse to use it. Vincent Palazzo was the opposite. He was calm, almost eerily so. He had spent his entire adult life being someone else. First, it was Sinatra. Before that, it was Dean Martin. Before that, Tony Bennett. He was a chameleon, a man with no fixed identity. When Frank asked him why he became an impersonator, Vincent shrugged. Because being myself wasn't interesting enough. It was a joke, but Frank didn't laugh. He recognized something in those words. A confession. The Miami Charity Gala was scheduled for December 14th, a benefit for children's hospitals hosted by the Fontainebleau. Frank was supposed to perform 3 songs, shake some hands, and disappear. But 2 days before the event, another threat arrived. This one was specific. Sinatra dies in Miami. Hank made the call. Vincent would go on first. He would perform the opening number, test the room, give Frank's security team time to scan the crowd. If everything was clear, Frank would take over for the second song. Nobody would know the difference. December 14th, 1963. Frank arrives at the Fontainebleau at 6 p.m. The hotel is a palace of white marble and turquoise water, the kind of place where money goes to feel beautiful. Frank checks into the penthouse suite. Vincent is already there, standing by the window, wearing an identical tuxedo. "You ready?" Frank asks. Vincent turns. In the golden Miami light, the resemblance is uncanny. Same blue eyes, same sharp jaw, same cocky tilt of the head. "Born ready, Chairman." Frank doesn't like that. He doesn't like how comfortable Vincent is in his skin. The evening begins. Downstairs, the ballroom fills with Miami's elite. Politicians, businessmen, movie stars, and the quiet men who own them all. Frank watches from a monitor in a back office, smoking cigarette after cigarette, studying the crowd. "There," he says, pointing at the screen. "Table 7, who's the guy in the gray suit?" Jilly leans in. "I don't know. I'll find out." Jilly. But there's no time. The orchestra is starting. The lights are dimming. Vincent adjusts his bow tie, takes a breath, and walks toward the stage. Frank feels something twist in his gut. He tells himself, it's caution, it's smart, let the double take the risk. But another voice, quieter, whispers something else. You're hiding. You're letting another man be you because you're afraid. Vincent steps into the spotlight. The applause is thunderous. 800 people rising to their feet for Frank Sinatra. Except it isn't Frank Sinatra. It's a ghost, a copy, a lie. Vincent opens his mouth and begins to sing. "Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars." His voice is perfect, too perfect. Frank watches, mesmerized and horrified. This man has stolen his soul and is wearing it like a costume. And then Frank sees it. Table 7. The man in the gray suit is standing. His hand is moving toward his jacket. Frank grabs the monitor. Jilly, table 7. But it's too late. The gunshot tears through the music like a scream through silk. Vincent staggers backward, clutching his shoulder. Blood blooms across the white fabric of his shirt, spreading like a dark flower. The orchestra screeches to a halt. The ballroom erupts into chaos. Frank doesn't think. He runs, not away from the danger, but toward it. He bursts through the backstage door and onto the stage, shoving past frozen stagehands. Vincent is on the ground now, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock. "Get a doctor," Frank screams. "Somebody get a goddamn doctor." He kneels beside Vincent. The blood is everywhere. Frank presses his hands against the wound, trying to stop the flow, but it keeps coming, hot and thick between his fingers. Vincent looks up at him. Did I hit the high note?" Frank almost laughs. "Almost. You hit it, kid. You hit it perfect." Security swarms the room. The man in the gray suit is tackled before he can fire again. Later, they'll discover he's a hired gun, paid by a Miami family who lost money when Frank's Calneva deal collapsed. But in this moment, none of that matters. All that matters is the man bleeding on the stage. "What's your real name?" Frank asks. His voice is barely a whisper. "Your real name, not the one you gave us." Vincent's eyes are glassy now. "Anthony," he says. "Anthony Russo, from Hoboken." Hoboken, Frank's hometown. This man, this stranger who took a bullet for him, grew up on the same streets Frank did, walked the same sidewalks, dreamed the same dreams. "Why'd you do it?" Frank asks. "Why'd you go out there?" Anthony smiles, blood on his teeth. "Because for one night, I got to be you. Really be you. That's worth more than anything." The paramedics arrive. They push Frank aside and load Anthony onto a stretcher. Frank stands there, covered in another man's blood, watching them wheel his reflection away. Anthony Russo survived. The bullet missed his heart by 2 inches. He spent 3 weeks in a Miami hospital, and Frank paid every bill without being asked. He visited once, in the middle of the night, wearing a hat and dark glasses. They didn't talk about the shooting. They talked about Hoboken, about the old neighborhood, about the bakery on Washington Street that made the best cannoli in Jersey. When Anthony was discharged, Frank offered him a job. Not as a double, as part of his security team. "You already took a bullet for me," Frank said. "Might as well make it official." Anthony declined. "I appreciate it, Mr. Sinatra, but I think I'm done being you." He went back to Jersey City. He quit the impersonator circuit. He opened a small music store and taught piano to kids. He never performed as Frank Sinatra again. Frank never hired another double. After that night in Miami, he couldn't. He told Jilly, "That kid showed me something I didn't want to see." He was willing to die for a version of me that doesn't even exist. The tuxedo, the swagger, the voice, it's all a costume. And I've been wearing it so long, I forgot there's a man underneath. The threats continued for a few more months, then faded. The would-be assassin went to prison. The Miami family that hired him quietly dissolved. But something in Frank had changed. He became more reckless, not less. He stopped hiding. He stopped checking the crowds for danger. Maybe he was tired of being afraid. Or maybe he decided that if someone was going to shoot Frank Sinatra, they should at least be shooting the real one. There's a moment in every man's life when he sees himself clearly. Not the version he shows the world. Not the myth he's built. The real thing underneath, raw and unprotected. For Frank Sinatra, that moment came on a bloody stage in Miami, looking into the eyes of a man who had made a career out of being him. Anthony Russo wasn't a star. He wasn't rich or famous or powerful. But he understood something that Frank had forgotten. The mask isn't the man. The performance isn't the person. And when you spend your whole life pretending to be something larger than life, you can forget what your actual life feels like. Frank Sinatra built an empire on image, on cool, on untouchable confidence. But that night, he learned that images can be copied, they can be stolen, they can be shot at. The only thing that can't be taken from you is who you really are when no one's watching. Anthony Russo took a bullet for a fantasy, but in doing so, he gave Frank Sinatra something more valuable than protection. He gave him a mirror, and in that mirror, Frank finally saw the truth. The chairman of the board was just a man from Hoboken who got lucky, got talented, and got lost along the way. The question isn't whether you're wearing a mask. We all are. The question is whether you remember what's underneath, and whether, when the moment comes, you have the courage to take it off. This is one of those stories that got buried under brighter headlines. A shooting at a charity gala. A singer injured. Case closed. But for those who know where to look, it reveals something profound about the man behind the legend. Frank Sinatra wasn't just a voice. He was a contradiction, tough and fragile, public and private. The king of the world, and a scared kid from New Jersey. This was Frank Sinatra. Legacy Confidential. If this story changed how you see Sinatra, hit like. Share it with someone who understands that legends are built on moments like these. And tell us in the comments, have you ever worn a mask so long you forgot who was underneath? What made you take it off? We're just getting started. There are stories about Ava, about the Kennedys, about the night Frank walked away from everything he built. Subscribe, because the next chapter might be the one that changes everything you thought you knew. Until then, keep swinging, and remember, the real you is the only version worth protecting.